Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Cell Phones, Chatbots, and Classrooms, Navigating Tech Together. My name is Alana Powers O'Brien, and I am the Research and Program Specialist here at the Family Online Safety Institute. Around this time each year, we host a back-to-school webinar because the school year means many things for family online safety. Routines and rules change, as do the ways that families use technology during this busy back to school season. This year, though, there is added attention being paid to the intersection of education and technology because of the debates around topics like school smartphone bans and the ever-growing presence of AI and generative AI tools. As of this recording, the majority of states have banned or regulated smartphones in school in some capacity. There are also many local government and school policies on this issue as well. In tandem with smartphone bans, schools are trying to navigate how this new wave of artificial intelligence should change teaching styles and their rule books, if at all. So the goal of this webinar is to discuss what back to school season means for students, teachers, and parents in 2025. To make this happen, we're going to break this webinar up into two parts. For the first part of this webinar, I will talk to two digital parenting experts who will introduce themselves very soon, as well as a teen and the daughter of one of those digital parenting experts. Then for the second part of this webinar, we will focus on state policy around kids and tech. For this portion, you will hear from my colleague, Marissa Edmond, and representatives from the Maine Department of Education. The last 10 minutes of this event will be reserved for questions. Feel free to put your questions in the chat as we go, and then we will answer them at the end in those last 10 minutes. So now I'd like to invite the first panelists onto the screen to introduce themselves. Stephanie and Emery, are you able to join us on screen? Awesome, thank you so much. So first, I'd like to just go around and have the three of you introduce yourselves, just a quick introduction about who you are and what you do. So Rachel, we'll start with you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. It's an honor to have the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Rachel Lee, and I'm the founder of Healthfully. And at Healthfully, we have workshops and other one-on-one interactions with young people and parents directly to help them build healthy digital habits in support of their kids. And I am a certified health and digital wellness educator. And most importantly, I'm a mom to two screenagers. I have a ninth grader daughter and a seventh grader son, and they are my best teachers.
Awesome, thank you so much, Rachel. So let's pass it over to you, Stephanie, and then we'll go to Emery.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie LeBlanc Godfrey. I am the founder and CEO of MotherAI. It's a company that I created to fill in the gap around AI understanding, specifically for parents. I'm a mom of three kids spanning elementary, middle, and high school aged kids. And so when I was looking to understand how I can utilize AI and help them with what it means for them in school, there was nothing there. And so I created at the time. And so I created this company to just share my lived experience as both being a technologist, having recently left Google from being there for over a decade, and then my lived experience as a mom and screenagers, all of the things with my kids as well, and helping parents to understand the impact of AI in their life.
Hi, my name is Emery, and I am a student athlete at West Orange High School, and I'm a sophomore this year.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, all three of you. So we've touched on this a little bit, but I think it's important to point out that Rachel and Stephanie, your organizations are relatively new to the scene. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey into this work and what looks like for you, and also what sort of drives you to do this work as an intersection of tech and online safety.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it, it, the work itself, I've been following the work and doing the work for some time, but starting Healthfully is relatively new because there's now, I think, a lot more momentum around understanding digital wellness. And so just really excited and wanting to be a part of it, wanting to support families, and young people. And so, my career has primarily centered around supporting families and helping young people build the skills that they need to thrive. I initially started my practice as an attorney for foster youth. And then moved on to build academic success programs for struggling students in schools. And then most recently was a director at a digital literacy nonprofit. And so through all of this work and on the side as well, I've been a fitness coach and an athletic coach for over 20 years. And the continuing thread, and I think all of my experience, is the fact that, kids can't wait. And you know, just like how we think about our health and other aspects of our wellness, we need the skills, the knowledge, the support, and the community in order to effectuate change. And so, yeah, I started Healthfully to try to bring that to young people in the digital wellness space.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I know we're on opposite coasts, but if we're ever in the same town, I'm coming to one of your workout classes. But I think we really feel that momentum towards and sort of eyeballs on this sort of issue at FOSI as well. So thank you for sharing that. And Stephanie, let's pass it over to you to talk about Mother AI a little bit.
Sure. So, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I'd started MotherAI a couple of months after ChatGPT launched in November of 22. And the reason being is, it seemed like AI was just rediscovered for the masses, even though it has been in services and products that we know, love, and use every single day. And when now having this consumer facing ability to engage with AI, I had difficulty understanding how it could benefit me, how to utilize it, but then also how my kids could use it. And my background, I have a degree in electrical engineering. I've spent majority of my corporate career in digital media at Google, so at the forefront of technology. And I still couldn't grasp, like, okay, what does this mean for me, a working mom? What does this mean for my kids in terms of having access to this new way of doing work, of thinking, of engaging? And I knew if I had that issue, being steeped in with a technical background, then my friends and my family, would be struggling even more so, and just have no idea the rapid pace at which this technology is developing and encroaching in every part of our life. And so I said, you know what? I'm not busy. Job, kids, husband, the whole thing. Let me just start a company to do that. And it's been such a rewarding experience to really focus in on parents who, one, are super invested in the success and the livelihood of their kids, but also carry such a mental and cognitive burden in our brains of managing all the things. And so from this perspective, I wanted to show how this emerging technology could benefit us outside of the doom and gloom and apocalyptic kind of storylines and headlines that we're hearing about. While those are very real concerns, there's also in the meantime and right now ways that we can not only use it for our benefit, but that we can educate our kids about how to use it, especially in the absence of our government and corporations really setting up true guidelines and safety guardrails for them. The onus has to be on us to support our kids, but then also advocate for change with those same entities to really um, positively impact our kids and not negatively, like we've seen with social media and screen time and all these things and the impacts that it could have there. So that's my why for Mother AI.
Yeah, yeah, that was very well put. And we hear a lot that it's just a very overwhelming landscape. So thank you for carving out that niche of something that parents are really concerned about in AI and Gen AI and helping them out. I think it's something that's really, really needed as well. And Emery, I wanted to pass it over to you and just ask you if you could tell us a little bit about your overall tech journey as a teenager in 2025. We were talking when we met earlier that adults are always really curious about what it's really like, navigating tech and school and sort of that intersection these days.
Yeah, so for me, technology is everywhere. I've definitely been exposed to it since my mom works with AI and so does my dad. But my earliest memory is definitely using like my mom's old phone to play like ABC Mouse and like Toca Boca. So like overall just like simple like little games. But as I've gotten older, I started using like actually using Chromebooks in school since sixth grade, where it was used every single day for every period. So I've just grown up like using it for everything. Like I come into class, open my Chromebook, and I start doing my work. So it's just something I'm so used to that I don't even think about it as being, oh my gosh, I use so much technology in my daily life.
Yeah, I was actually talking to a 16-year-old yesterday who had a very similar sentiment, and it's almost hard to grasp that like people from other generations didn't grow up in that same way, and like how do we sort of make that divide a little bit smaller in between us? So thank you so much for sharing, Emery. I want to dive a little bit into smartphone bans, classroom smartphone bans. So this is a pretty widely talked about issue, and sometimes it's a bit controversial as well. Um, so Stephanie, let's start with you here. In an ideal world, drawing from your experience in tech and also your experience as a mother, what should smartphone use or lack thereof in schools look like?
Yeah, so this is something that I go back and forth on. I know all of, the science behind the access to screens, particularly in the classroom, TikTok, all of this short form content that can, impact and distract kids from education. So from that perspective, I'm like, yes, take it out of the classroom. But also living in the reality of our world where safety is an issue. My kids have had lockdown drills over the years, and they've been able to call me, or things have happened in school and they've been able to call me directly. And so I would hate to lose that access, just knowing what we see and the sort of daunting experiences that parents have. So I am a proponent of having it in the classrooms just for that reason alone. Like again, in terms of spanning ages, like my elementary school son, he has like the watch where he can only like call a couple of numbers, and so that's how I could have access to him. Although he has like messaged me like in class, and so we had to edit the controls on that. But at least he can get access to me. For my middle school, they ban it, but in terms of you can have your phone, but there are consequences if you get caught with it. So my middle schooler will not answer, not reach out, not do anything. She really uses it case of emergency. My high schooler, I've been asked to bring lunch, to bring tea, to bring forgotten glasses
Shoes.
or computers, all of those things. But then she's also shared like, hey, I'm feeling really
Yeah.
sick or lockdown drills and things like that. And so for that, I will take a shoe or tea request to
Yeah.
kind of know if major things are happening with her at school.
Yeah, I think that overall sentiment really speaks to something that we talk about a lot here at FOSI, which is you start in a sort of really controlled way, like with your elementary schooler and having the watch, but not too much tech. The middle schooler sort of in between, and then the high schooler, they're starting to gain their independence, and they still need to contact you, and they also have a little bit more freedom to decide what they want to use their device for or not. So I think that's a really great example of how we sort of envision overall tech use as an organization as well. So thank you so much for that, Stephanie. Rachel, I want to pose the same question for you. What should smartphone use or lack thereof look in schools look like, in your opinion?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Stephanie, kind of the pros and cons and the real, the real dilemmas, that make this issue really hard. I mean, I guess I think of it like a cost benefit analysis in a way. It's like I think um, that the benefits of not having a smartphone outweigh the cost. And, school is the great equalizer. For 7 to 8 hours in a day, it's the one place that all kids share. And so learning not just academics, but right, like how to communicate, even when sometimes the communication is with conflict, right? How to collaborate, how to navigate really tricky social dynamics. And so when smartphones enter that space, just like we see how smartphones enter any space, right? For adults too, it shifts our attention away from the present moment, sometimes from dialogue and the connection that involves eye contact and body language, like what we're doing right now. Right. And so we risk losing one of the last environments where kids can truly be fully engaged with each other. And so we don't know, right, what's happening elsewhere in a child's life. We can't control for those other environments or factors, but it would go such a long way if we knew that for each child, for 7 to 8 hours a day, they can focus on learning and relationships without distraction. And for K through 12, that's a lot of years of that. I think it would be really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I love the idea of, school as a safe place where all of our kids can go and learn, of course, academics, but also those social and emotional life lessons as well. So Emery, I want to ask you a slightly different question. So your mom talked about how your school sort of, lets you have your phone and use it as you want. But I'm curious, is that something that works for you? Do you have an idea of maybe what you think these cell phone bans or lack thereof should look like for other people your age?
So in my school, at least in my classes, because I'm in honors classes, we are allowed to have our phones, but there's a sense of like, oh, if you're on your phone, you're choosing to not pay attention in the class, and that will
Mhm.
result in you missing information or what's going on in the assignment. So we know how to regulate ourselves and put the phone away for 55 minutes and pay attention. And of course,
Mhm.
I definitely do this. I'll go on my phone sometimes when the teacher's talking, but I'm still paying attention. And I feel like as being in high school, you should be able to say, hey, I need to pay attention and not be on my phone. So, and like also, we usually such like so much in a social aspect in lunch, we're definitely on our phones, but we're all like doing it together. Like my friend today, she brought her iPad and we were watching a movie and like our whole lunch table was just crowded around watching. So it definitely does create a very like social connection, but school-wise, like during teaching, like during your actual classes, you should definitely learn how to control it yourself without having a teacher to tell you, hey, get off your phone and pay attention.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I was in college about 10 years ago, and it was basically the exact same rule for most of my classes. So I would assume that's kind of still the same. So you're sort of preparing for that next step as well. So that's probably great practice as well. So I want to turn and talk a little bit about AI and Gen AI. Um, I want to start by asking, and Stephanie, we'll go to you first. What role do parents play in shaping their kids' understanding of AI, and what should those conversations with kids look like?
Yeah, so first I want to let parents off the hook that you're not supposed to know everything. What is true for AI and Gen AI last week is different this week. And I live, sleep, eat, breathe this stuff as having a AI company, and it's so hard to keep up with. So I want, to let you know it's not about becoming an AI expert. It's just about the awareness that this thing exists, that it is changing rapidly, and that you need to at least dabble in it and have an understanding of it so that you can have conversations with your kids about it. And we have this a lot, as Em mentioned. Like my husband and I, we use AI a ton in our lives, and so we role model that for our kids. Like AI is not bad in that case. It's not cheating. It's not like, all of the sort of the negative connotations that they have around it. But we are super intentional about balancing the conversations that we're having when we use AI. Critical thinking skills, trust but verify, learn from it, but then take that and put your own spin and your own special sauce of who you are into what's being created, so that they're seeing it as additive to it and not replacing all of the creativity and human side of that is so important to creating and building and just navigating life. And so with that, just starting with small steps. There are all of these AI trends. So she was showing me one where you can make your sneakers glow. And so we played around with that, but then it changed her entire face. And so we're like, how does it change your entire face but keeps everything? So doing those sort of activities with your kids and having conversations keeps uh just the bi-directional conversation open, and that we're learning it together, and it's not something that has to be like taught to them and like parents need to know all of it. We can learn together, and I think that's a really unique aspect to getting our kids to see us as humans and not just
Mhm.
the know-it-all rulers and
Right.
influencers that they see as parents. And so AI has that cool opportunity to build that connection there.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that that is a really cool part about tech is usually parents and kids are learning together, and kids can actually take over that teacher role sometimes too, which I think can be really helpful in terms of collaboration. Rachie, I want to pose the same question to you. So, how should parents, navigate teaching their children about AI, and what does that look like in your family, and what do you recommend for other families as well?
Yeah, I really second what Stephanie said. I mean, that was going to be my response as well. You know, I will add that I think a lot of times as parents, right, we don't bring things up with our kids because we feel like we've got to know the answers, be the experts, or have gone through it ourselves, right? But this is an area where none of those things, we don't check any of those boxes. And so I think what I've done is just lean into what I do know are my values. What I do know are my family values, right? And so things around, in my family, I think, my husband's a lawyer as well. We're just kind of naturally skeptical. We're curious, but we're also skeptical. And so that's our value, right? So I bring that into the conversation, just like what Stephanie said, like ask open-ended questions, maybe explore together, but also be skeptical together, right? And so I would just encourage parents, like, just start just start
Right.
talking about it. Just start today, and it could be simply like, I actually don't know much. Like, are you willing to show me? What do you think? Right? Because as Emery indicated, young people know a lot. They know more than the adults, right? And so maybe the conversation today is simply just ask the question of, what do you know, and what are you willing to share with me?
Right. And that collaboration, I think, is such an important point. And that's not like something new that we've introduced in when we're talking about online safety. We say similar things about parental controls and social media and things like that. So
Mhm.
if you have your sort of baseline there already extending, and also, the best day to start is today, right? So we are running out of time on this section already, and I feel like we could talk for 2 hours, but I want to just wrap by Emery, asking you, what are adults missing about kids' AI and Gen AI use? If you wouldn't mind cueing us in a little bit.
Yeah, so adults definitely think that AI to us teenagers is like this huge, like mind-blowing thing. And to me, it's super normal. It's like, you didn't have this growing up. Like, it's just such a normal aspect of my life. And for kids, like for us, it's just something we use. Like it's our in our everyday life. Like we use it without a second thought. We just use it. And it's definitely useful, like in a lot of ways. Like for my schoolwork, I use it a lot in a homework question, and I just ask AI to like simplify it and tell me like what is this question actually asking.
Yeah.
But I feel like we just use it. It's just such a normal thing. I don't even know how to explain the question because it just is. It's something that is here and will probably for be here forever.
Yeah, and that's a really great place to wrap, I think, knowing that this isn't a fad, but maybe the direction that we're moving in terms of using AI and Gen AI more going forward. And we're FOSI is actually conducting some research on, teens' perception and use of Gen AI that we'll unveil in a couple of months at our annual conference. So really looking forward to having some data to back up a lot of what you just said, Emery. So thank all three of you so much for sharing your thoughts. Again, I wish that we could talk for so much longer. If you're comfortable, you can drop your contact information in the chat, Stephanie and Rachie. And if people have follow-up questions that we don't get to at the end, they can ask them there. And you'll also come back on screen for the final 10 minutes, and people can ask you questions then as well. But for now, I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Marissa, to talk through these subjects from more of a policy standpoint.
Thank you so much, Alana, Rachie, Stephanie, and Emery. A fantastic way to queue up the next part of our discussion, talking about policy. So if my two co-panelists wouldn't mind joining me on screen. Thank you so much. Hello, welcome, Nicole and Kate. Thank you so much for being here. To introduce myself, I'm Marissa Edmond. I'm the state policy lead here at FOSI. And when developing this panel, as my colleague Alana mentioned, we couldn't ignore the state of the states, as we like to call it. And we're seeing this broad wave of online safety legislation. And as a part of that, we're seeing legislation related to technology in schools. We've seen cell phone regulations, AI legislation, and media and digital literacy come to the fore as we're all learning to navigate this space together. So in my research, I came across a state that's taking strides to bridge some of these knowledge gaps. So I'm going to ask my two lovely panelists if they wouldn't mind introducing themselves, and we'll start with Nicole and then move to Kate.
Hello, my name is Nicole Davis, and I'm the Emerging Technology Specialist for the Maine Department of Education. I've been in education for about 20 years, doing all sorts of things, tech, math, science, different variety of grade levels, and kind of ended in this role that I love.
Amazing, thank you so much. Kate?
Great. Hi, I'm Kate. I am an instructional innovation specialist at Mount Desert Island High School, and I teach English. And I've been here for about 25 years teaching English and design thinking, and now the AI is on the scene. I'm here in a bit of a different role.
Amazing. And Kate, I think we'll start with you. We just heard from some incredible advocates, a mother-daughter duo, and they talked about some cell phone regulations that are happening in school. And as a teacher, I'm sure you have never had to deal with a cell phone in the classroom. So I wanted to get your take, if you can share a little bit about what the cell phone policy is, either in your classroom or in the state of Maine, and how you're managing.
Well, Maine now requires that schools have a cell phone policy, and so it is up to schools to decide what that is and then to implement it. We've gone through a couple of iterations. Last year, the policy was, the teacher will ask you to put your cell phone away, and then you should do that, which left a lot of room for conflicts, because if the cell phone wasn't put away, then the teacher was expected to address it, and that could create a power struggle. This year, the policy has changed a little bit, and so now when a student walks into the classroom, they are expected to put their cell phone in a stand that is in the front of the classroom. And every classroom was given the same stand. It looks the same everywhere. It's a visual cue. And there have been no issues, I will have to say, with that. In fact, I forget every single day, and my students walk in and just put their cell phones in the stand. And so instead of me reminding them to do that, which I forget, I end up getting to say thank you for remembering to put your cell phones in the stand. I did ask them the other day, do you notice a difference in classes this year and last year? And they said that they are definitely being more social with each other in classes, which is great. I think that's part of what we want.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned this, you kind of described this sort of phenomenon that when there are, regulations in place, students adjust. And if you wouldn't mind sharing what levels you teach or what grades, so we can kind of get an understanding. From the previous panel, we sort of saw that tier moving up. So maybe elementary school, there are, bands, but high school, and at least where Emory is, there is some acknowledgement that teaching children some responsibility in using cell phones.
Yep, I am in high school and I teach honors junior English.
Amazing. Okay, incredible. And we spoke a little bit before about your zones, your AI zone. So I would love to hear about this resource. I think in developing this panel, I really wanted to bring in the teacher voice, because they're being, as you know, asked to do a lot. Create curriculum or related to media and digital literacy, teach it, instruct it, and you been able to do that. So how has that process been for you? And do you mind describing a little bit about what your resource is?
Absolutely. So I actually met Nicole through our work together at the DOE. Our state has a program called the Distinguished Educator Program. They hire educators to come out of the classroom for 2 years, work for the DOE, and then go back to their classroom. So I got to do that, and my 2 years was about digital instructional design and digital citizenship. And Nicole and I overlapped there and became colleagues. At the same time, ChatGPT came out. So it was our job to learn how to use it and to talk to educators about it. And so when I came back to my classroom, for the first 2 years that I was back, I came back full-time English teacher. And so I just started implementing everything that I had learned and was learning about AI. And as Stephanie mentioned, it's changing every single day. So I was learning every day and implementing new ideas. And teachers were struggling. You could see very quickly that teachers were struggling with students who nobody was talking to them about AI. And so I really think, because we don't want them to misuse it. We just don't talk to them about it. And so they misuse it anyway. And it becomes their kind of hiding it. So I wanted to bring to the forefront this idea that let's talk to our students about AI. Let's talk to them about how to use it and when to use it and when not to use it. And so I created the AI use zones for our district. Right now, we're just starting to use them at the high school 9 through 12. And it's a continuum of AI use that ranges from no AI use. So it's okay for a teacher to say, you know what, for this assessment, no AI, all the way up to a level 6, which is, full AI. So you're going to show off your AI literacy skills and your content knowledge. And it's a continuum that doesn't place value on AI use. So there's no shame at any level. Every level is appropriate, just depending on what the task is.
I love that so much. And I think that is such a very good phrase and just perspective to have on the no shame aspect. So we've heard from one perspective of cell phone use is available in schools, and then we've seen that cell phone use is not available in schools, and that students are learning and navigating in ways, and they find ways to navigate and to learn and to share together. So you mentioned that you worked with Nicole on this, on your sort of space that we were learning in. And Nicole, I want to bring you in to talk a little bit more about MLTI, what you do there, what the organization does, and a little bit about the resource that you helped develop.
Nice. So MLTI is the Maine Learning Technology Initiative. And way back when, we were the first to do one-to-one devices statewide. And then as that developed, we kind of realized that what else, there's a piece missing there, and that needs to be the professional development. And that's where, I think 4 years ago now, we really kind of focused on professional development and how we can bridge kind of the teachers, and how can we bring educators in order to provide that professional development? Sometimes when you're at the state level and you're not in the classroom and then giving professional development and saying, I know this, it's a little, so we really wanted to be able to have individuals that can say, I'm in the field, I'm from the field. And so each year we get 4 or 5 new ambassadors, which are distinguished educators, and they come in and we train them on different things. And that's where I started and overlapped with Kate. And then I stayed on as the emerging technology digital specialist. And I would say one of the beautiful pieces about my work is that I've gotten to work with teachers over the last 3 years. And Kate and I also have a very close relationship, so that we actually work. It's very nice because I can be like, hey, check out these things. And she can be like, look what I did with it in the classroom. So it works real well. And that's one of the pieces when we were developing the AI guidance toolkit that, and it's at the forefront of a lot of our work, is that we want educators to have their voice and what is it. So we, between the professional development that we'd already done, as well as we gathered groups to say, what is it that you need in this guidance? And after that, we started kind of putting things together and gathering all the resources. We wanted our tool to be interactive so that way it could be something that is engaging and accessible to teachers versus something that's just a long document that is less likely to have the time to read. The other piece with this is that we take feedback very seriously. So right now we're developing a course because the AI guidance toolkit has the feedback we've gotten is it's great, but it's a lot. So then the question becomes, how do we break that down? I think that answered our question.
Absolutely. And I think you're describing such a beautiful example of collaboration at the state level, at the local level, bringing in teachers and ensuring that voices are heard, because all of the resources in the world can be created, but if they're not effective and able to be used in the classroom when they're needed, they're not going to be as effective. So I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into the toolkit itself. So we heard Kate mention some of the zones that she implemented. Can you walk us through a little bit of what the toolkit looks like? And we'll be sure to drop the example in the chat for folks that would like to bring this back to their state.
Yeah, so there's 4 different sections. We have an overview, a teaching, learning, leadership, and additional support piece. And so really based in AI literacy, our overview kind of starts with our state's, outlook on technology in general, which means that whenever we're doing any type of technology, we are really having a foundation in digital leadership, and then digital citizenship. And then learning about that first piece of AI literacy is learning about how AI works. So that's that first section with overview. Teaching and learning really digs into our ethical and responsible use that actually Kate and I have come up with, which is an acronym HUMAN. That's the idea that H, we want to halt and pause and say, is this something we want to use for use AI for. It also is the idea that I'm part of the process the whole entire way. U stands for utilize, where I'm thinking about the prompts that I'm using and using it as a thought partner versus a prompt and post. M stands for monitor, where I'm considering that there's bias in these tools and that also they could be inaccurate. A stands for authenticate, really thinking about, is this my work and is it authentic to my voice? And then N stands for note for next steps. The leadership piece of the AI tool kit does talks about different policy and gives guidance and examples as far as that. And then additional support has different examples of things that we've done around the state, as well as policies that are in place around the state. The state of Maine is a local control, so we give this guidance and then they kind of go with it and have those conversations and things at their level. And so we also have a state that at the very tippity top, we've got lots of rural areas, and at the bottom we have a different, like, compact populations with a lot of people. And so it's very, very diverse as far as populations and the things like that. So that local control is a must to start having those conversations. And what does it look like to have examples from other places so I know where to start?
I first of all love the acronym HUMAN and bringing in, and that nod to that, bringing in the connection of humans and technology. And in our pre-panel call, we touched a little bit on what you just mentioned, Nicole, that Maine has a variety of demographics and a variety of students, Kate, that either live in, rural Maine, and I think that's where your school is based versus the city. So if you want to talk a little bit about how important it is for that collaboration and that information and resource sharing because of the wide scope of the state of Maine.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I'm a few hours north of Nicole, I think for all intents and purposes there. I live on the mid-coast and my school is on an island. And so it's rural and then a little more rural. And then I even have students who live on smaller islands off of the bigger islands. So they take a ferry over every morning to get to this island and then take a bus to the school. So it's a very unique situation, and there are a lot of unique situations in Maine because of the really unique geography of the state. So in Maine, technology and access to technology isn't a luxury. It's really an equity issue. And so Nicole mentioned MLTI, bringing one-to-one devices. My students have had their own devices for over 20 years. So I've been teaching one-to-one in the classroom my entire career, basically. And so that helps us level the playing field in the state because we can't, if there's professional development about AI in the southern part of the state, some educators have to travel 8 hours or have to take a ferry and then travel 6 hours, right? It's a big equity issue. And by, being able to do things online, by being able to access resources online and all of us having access to this technology, it puts us all on that level playing field and allows us to collaborate and learn and create together. It's just really essential. And so we're able to, Nicole and I work together all the time, and we're 3 hours apart, and we get to work with educators all around the state all the time because we all have access to technology. So really it's an equity issue, and we're very lucky in that our state recognizes that.
Thank you so much for bringing that into the conversation about equity, because I think that may get lost sometimes in the conversation when we just want to ban technology for maybe across the entire state, a cell phone ban. But there are also use cases, as you very beautifully mentioned, that it can't just be, no cell phones in schools or no cell phones, period, when, children might need access to their, younger siblings or family members. So thank you so much for describing that. I also, want to touch on a little bit, and this is for both Nicole and Kate. Maine, I think, did a great job of this collaboration. And I think, Nicole, we were talking earlier, and they said this is a small team, and we were, able to accomplish this. So a little bit of a two-part question. Talk about the importance of the stakeholder engagement, so bringing teachers into the conversation. And then if you can speak to other states or other, Department of Education across the country and describe a little bit about how you were able to do this collaboration, what you needed from the state of Maine in order to do this, and how that collaboration ended up working. And then maybe later on, we'll talk about maybe what didn't work and how you could help some other states that way. And this is for either one of you.
Yeah, I think in my role, I'm very, very fortunate because I'm not so out of the classroom. I get to go to schools. I get to hear what educators say. I get to hear the angry teachers and the ones that are upset about AI and panicked. And I get to hear the ones that are like, rah, rah, let's go, let's do this, and all the way in between. And so that just the time that I've spent in schools doing professional development has really given me the ability to hear what is going on in the field and seeing it firsthand. Right down to like, I can remember one of the first presentations I did with administrators. I went in there and I was like, all right, well, they already know about this. And so I'm just going to do this part. And then it was like, oh, I had to back up a little bit and like talk about what is AI. And so having those experiences firsthand really allowed me to build this thing from their perspective and what it is they need. And then just being able to, constantly access that. So whether it's a PD that I'm doing next week or in a couple weeks, or setting up those Zoom calls so that educators can come and have those conversations with me about this. That's important. The other piece with this, and we're slowly getting it in, and I need to do an update, is having educators contribute. So what lessons, what are you doing in the classroom? So that way, as educators, we really learn from one another. So I can say, oh, look what they did over at MDI. I think I could do that in my classroom. And it becomes more an accessible document, an accessible thing, because it's about teachers and for teachers versus something that we're just doing like for them or on them. And so that's super important. I think that's the biggest piece of this, is that being in schools and having that perspective and hearing educators is so important. And I'm thankful that my job allows me to do that.
I love that so much. Kate, did you have anything to add about the importance of integrating teacher voices and how that collaboration has worked for you?
I just think that that's something that Maine is doing really well, is the outreach to educators, because like Nicole said, this isn't something that's being done to us. We are a part of it. We have a voice. We get to share through it and network with each other through the guidance. And I think it's a very strong model. It gets educators, kind of on your side, right, as you're building that guidance out. And it's important because we're all building this out for the betterment of our state. So.
Amazing. And I love that. I want to give you both the opportunity to talk a little bit about what's next. I know we can never, predict the future. I don't think, 15 years ago, we'd be talking about how to integrate AI into the classroom. But if you talk maybe, Nicole, about what's next on the horizon. So the AI guidance toolkit just came out. Is MLTI working on anything else? And then as you're thinking about that question, also, what would you like other school districts to know, or other states and policymakers to know about the importance of initiatives like this one?
Yeah, I think what's next? Staying on top of the research and everything like that. So my title of my position is emerging technology, and we could have put, and sometimes I do, I'll say AI and emerging technology specialist. But that emerging piece, it's important that we're constantly looking ahead. And this is what I love about my collaboration with Kate, is we're like, where are we? And I think we're still in that position of like teachers using the tools for students versus with students. We're maybe touching it a little bit there, but I think that's really like, how do we get to that next step? The AI course is one piece that we're going to start to put out and develop that, so it can be something that educators start to do, so that they really feel comfortable with AI. And even if it's just that first part of starting to feel comfortable using it for themselves, that's the start, right? So that they can go from that fear to inspiration and then keep moving towards how are we going to use this with our students. As far as what I would tell other districts, people, I would say keep the teacher voice in it. It's so important. We've got to make sure that we have our teachers have training, and that they have those things available so that they can feel comfortable navigating this new landscape.
Thanks so much. Kate, how about you? What are you looking forward to in the future, and maybe a call out for state policymakers?
I'm really excited. I'm starting to train my faculty in the zones, which, as Nicole mentioned, it's about using AI with students instead of for them. So dipping toes in a little bit further into the world of AI and how we can use it ethically and responsibly in the classroom. I really think that is where we need to head next. And once we can get that, get people comfortable with, AI can be used as a tool when done well. Then really starting to push like how we use it as a creative tool and how we can use it to push ourselves as thinkers and learners. But we have to get comfortable with it first. But I'm really excited to look into the future and think about how we're going to really use it to push ourselves so that we can do things that we couldn't do before. I think that's where it starts to get really exciting.
I love this so much. Thank you both. I think one of the themes that came out of this is collaboration, and it is not a one size fits all. Even just in the toolkits that you both have mentioned, that it's a spectrum. There are zones we can completely abandon or we can completely integrate. So I think this would be a perfect time to jump into some audience Q&A. So I'll have all of the panelists from the session before jump back on screen, and we'll do a few audience Q&A. And while we're getting set up there, if folks from both panels, if you want to just share an insight from what you heard on someone else's panel, I think that'd be a great time to do that. And then I'll jump into the first question.
I loved hearing from Emery, everyone you said, you couldn't really answer the question because AI is just part of your landscape every single day. And I think that that's a really good reminder for those of us who might be older than a sophomore in high school, that it really is integrated into every facet, and it's not some amazing Wild West tool for them.
I'll jump into our first question, which looks like it might be for Rachie. You mentioned that you used to work with youth in foster care. Are there specific risks to vulnerable populations like kids in foster care when it comes to technology? How do we work to combat these risks? Oh, sorry, I think you're on mute, Rachie.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was thinking about the question, many of these risks, existed before, AI and smartphones. And so risk around um, foster youth physical safety, understanding who can be trusted and who not to trust. And so, I would say that yes, I do feel like, foster youth, unfortunately, is a more vulnerable population, but many of the risks that we talk about today really applies across the board. And so I think with that said, now foster youth oftentimes might not have one stable environment or one set of supportive adults because depending on the circumstances, they might move around quite a bit or switch schools. And so I think this is why it's even more important that schools have the education to pass on to young people around issues like online safety and privacy and digital citizenship, right? Because for all young people, again, school is that one place where they all go to for 7 to 8 hours a day, and even for foster youth as well, right? And so if all schools were to have that education, it could be incredible. It could make an incredible difference for foster youth, but all young people.
Thank you so much, and highlights again the importance of these resources for teachers. Stephanie, I'd like to pose a question to you. How can AI be used for elementary age children? So I think we heard a little bit about the older end of the K through 12 spectrum, but what about elementary school kids?
Yeah, so I've got lots of ways that I use it for my son. One, homework. If I do nothing else with AI, helping with homework is the most amazing thing. They do not add the way that we added. They do not carry the one anymore. And so it's like I was speaking another language when he was learning how to add, especially 2 and 3-digit numbers. And so this simple prompt helped me using the iReady curriculum. That's the curriculum that we use in the district that I live in. Using your school's curriculum, how do I add 300 plus 200 and give me step by step? And that gave me exactly the wording and the verbiage that he was hearing in school. I can now repeat that at home, and I won't say all the tears went away, but it was a lot less tears. You can attest to
Yeah.
that. And then the second piece is around creativity. And so using just simply even Gemini has video, their video tools. So he's into sports, and so we'll play around with like, he's into football. So he's like, make me a 49ers, like making a goal. And so he's playing around with it. Again, taking this sort of like shift from just consuming technology and scrolling to being a creator. And so he's been using that creatively with the different video and photo features for him to kind of get accustomed and like look at like how it changes again his features, or just how it has extra fingers or the weirdness of it. And so then that in itself sparks really great conversation around like AI does not get it right all the time. It is not the place of truth, but we can have some fun with it and also critique it as well.
Thanks. And you pointed out a very good, as you mentioned, opportunity to have a conversation when maybe ChatGPT or whatever platform is wrong, having that spark a conversation and talking about, why we need to, keep this in mind as we're using it. And you also brought in another part that sometimes AI can just be used for fun. And maybe that gets, lost in some of the conversation. But Kate, I want to bring it back to you to talk a little bit about how you might be integrating when AI is able to be used in the classroom for a specific lesson. Has that happened? Have you been able to do that so far? And if so, what does that look like for you?
Actually, today, I built out a notebook with Notebook LM from all of the materials used in my first unit. We're coming to the conclusion of this first unit. So I put all of my materials in Notebook LM and I gave it to my students. And I said, this is where you can go to clarify information about this unit. Here's the rubric. If you don't understand something in the rubric, I've trained Notebook LM with the rubric. So you can ask it any questions. You can have the bot turn the rubric into a checklist of things that you need to do. You can question the mentor texts that we've read and studied together. You can create a podcast and listen to 2 AI podcasters talking about the materials from the unit. And it was the first time they had seen that tool, and they were pretty impressed by what they could do. And they all found something that they needed clarification on. And it's just such a great, again, this is a tool for equity and accessibility and UDL. It's breaking down barriers for students and giving them agency in their learning that I wasn't able to give them without this tool. So it's been really transformative in my practice. And so this is the second week of school and we're off.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I saved maybe a very broad and maybe longer question for the very end. So if maybe 1 or 2 folks want to answer this in the time that we have left, there's been a rise of children using Gen AI for therapy and companionship. So what advice for parents navigating these potential relationships, especially during a time of year, back to school, that can bring out a lot of change and anxiety? So maybe starting with Emery and if there's time, Rachie. Or, sorry, Stephanie, and then if there's time, Rachie. Or Emery, if you'd like to
Do
jump
you
in.
What do you think about
Yeah.
teens using it for companionship, friendship therapy?
Um, I use it not like for companionship, but like when I don't know how to respond to a text, I'll be like, how do I respond to this? Because I don't like know what they're trying to ask me. But like for companionship and like friendship, I just feel like AI shouldn't be able to respond to that like it is allowed to. Like it should say like, "Oh, unable to answer this question," or "I don't have enough information to do this." I feel like it should not be able to answer those type of personal questions that people are trying to ask.
I
I love
love
it.
that. And I think we can all take a note for that and bring that back to some of the folks that we work with. So yeah, Stephanie, please feel free.
And I'll just go quickly. I think this is the moment where parents really have to educate themselves on the various apps. So typically, we know what the Snapchat or Instagram or TikTok logo looks like. We need to know what the logos look like for these other companionship apps like Character AI and so forth, so that not only when we're having conversations with our kids, but then when we see their phones, that we can recognize it. We need that sort of recognition to be as popular as the social media, because it has as much as, if not more, of a detrimental effect as we've seen play out in the news recently. And again, it's all about, Rishi really drove this point home about what your family values are. And so having open conversation about what's going well, what you're struggling with, but also the real impact of using non-human interventions for mental and emotional support has to be the same conversation that we have about don't share your address on the internet. Like that has to be now part of the lexicon and the conversation that we have when it comes to just general digital safety.
Thanks, Stephanie and Emery. So building some of that general AI knowledge use case, I think would be is helpful in what I'm hearing you say. I think we're running just at time, but I thank you all so much for being here. Thank you all of you online who were able to join us. Alana and I are happy to answer any further questions that you might have and be able to connect you with each and every one of the panelists here today that can answer any more questions that you might have for them. Thank you all again and for tuning in, and have a great school year.